Welcome back to Mark My Words on AM 560, The Answer. I am your host, Mark Vargas, and tonight is our maiden voyage. We've got another special guest coming up, but I just want to let everyone know that in the next segment, I'll be taking your calls. I want to hear from many of you, and how you think the show's going so far. But before we do that, I want to get back to our next guest, who's also a very dear friend, and it's a political commentator and TV personality, Mr. Eric Bolling. Eric, how are you, my friend?
Mark, congratulations. I just want to wish you break a leg, as they say. And the reason why they say that is because, if you break a leg, you have to be in the cast. So therefore, you're a part of the cast. And guess what? It's time. You're a great voice. You're a great conservative, and great to have you on the airwaves. Congratulations, my friend.
Well, thank you, my friend. And when I sent you that text message that I was getting this show, and you jokingly said, "Hey, I discovered you." And you know what? The more I thought about that, you're a little bit right, man. I'd hate to admit that, but you were one of the first guys that gave me a chance to go on TV for one of your last few shows ago. And we always had engaging conversations talking about the wall and the border. But I just thought, you're a dear friend, and I thought you'd be perfect here as one of my first guests on this first show. But before we get into some other questions, hey, I wanted to ask you, you've got a podcast with Brett Favre. I mean, how in the world does Brett Favre and Eric Bolling meet?
Yeah.
And then let alone launch a podcast together? It's called Bowling with Favre, right?
Yeah, it's Bowling with Favre, and Hall of Fame quarterback and I get together.
I think, did we lose?
He's still there.
I think you still have me.
There you are. Sorry about that.
You got me?
Yeah, we got you.
So Brett and I we crossed paths. Unfortunately, the opioid crisis is where our roads crossed. I lost my only child, my son, to an opioid overdose, and Brett has a very well documented history with opioids, where he talks about how he won 2 MVPs back to back. And I can't remember what years, 05, 06 maybe or so, in an illustrious career. But those 2 years, he was completely high on conversation one day about a couple of years ago. And I said, hey, let's do a podcast. So we do a podcast, but we don't get too heavy. We're just two good friends, and we just kind of rip it around about all the topical stuff of the day, a lot of sports, a little bit of politics, and, stuff. So that's how that came together.
And I think we could all use a little bit of break from politics every once in a while. So I think we can get a healthy dose of that. We're talking to Eric Bolling here on AM 560, The Answer. Eric, you've got a close relationship with the president, and you've talked about this, but I'm not sure. A lot of people have heard this, but the president was one of the first people when you lost your son. The president was one of the first people that called you, wasn't he? And This is a side that I think that a lot of people don't see of President Trump. They see more of the brash guy, the tweeter, but he really does have a sensitive side, and you saw that as you were still dealing with the grief of losing your only child.
Yeah, so he won in 2016. President Trump was inaugurated in January of 2017. We lost our son in September of 2017, and it was I'll never forget. It was a hurricane. I can't remember. Maybe Hurricane Maria was coming up, and they were shutting down the East Coast. And Eric passed on the Memorial Day, or Labor Day weekend, September, and it looked like I was not going to be able to get to Colorado. He was a sophomore at the University of Colorado. My wife and I had just got the news, and we were just completely devastated, crying on the side of the road. And I couldn't get flights because they weren't flying because of this hurricane that's coming up, from the Lesser Antilles into Florida. We were on the East Coast. And President Trump called and said, anything I can do, do you want my airplane? I'll take my plane, his personal plane, not Air Force One, because he was president at the time. But he said, we take my plane if you want. I said, no, thank you, sir. We'll figure it out. And we did. But that was the moment that I realized that all the bluster and all the, dislike for the guy because he tweets mean tweets. Who cares? He's got a heart, and Melania's just as good a person as the president is too. So anyway, great guy, and we've remained friends. So
he is,
yeah.
and he's not like the way he's perceived in the press and the media, and you know that from a personal level. I mean, you were one of the 42 people that President Trump was following on Twitter, which
isn't that
is
amazing?
Unbelievable.
The guy had 82 million followers on Twitter, and he followed me from one of the 42, which means every time I tweeted, he saw it. But look, he is a force to be reckoned with. He holds the trump card, so to speak, because he can pull the rug out of any candidate that is trying to become an elected official. There are a lot of them who did him wrong, who he supported. They won, and then they backed. They ran from him,
right?
And they're going to pay the price. 2022 is going to get ugly for the people who weren't pro-Trump.
It is going to get ugly. We got about 30 seconds. We're here with Eric Bolling on AM 560 The Answer. Eric, do you think President Trump and we had Bernie Carrick on in the last segment, and I'm going to ask you the same question. Do you think President Trump's going to run for president again?
Look, he'll be 77, 78 if his health holds out, and he's a dynamo. He's a ball of energy, and I think it will. I think he probably will because he loved it and wants it again. No idea. But if I do know he'll be the most important force in American politics for the next 3 years.
No question about that, and even longer. Eric, hey, it was an honor to have you here as one of my inaugural guests on this show. Hope you can come back soon, but you're listening to Mark My Words on AM 560 The Answer. Coming up next, I'll be taking your calls.